In the early morning darkness of May 1st, 1960, a single aircraft slipped silently into Soviet airspace. No weapons, no escort, no backup plan. 30,000 feet below, millions of Soviet citizens were waking up to another day in the Cold War. But nearly 70,000 feet above them, one American pilot carried secrets powerful enough to ignite World War III. His name was Francis Gary Powers. For years, the United States had been desperate to uncover what was happening behind the Iron Curtain. Soviet nuclear facilities, missile sites, military movements. America needed answers. And the CIA believed they had built the perfect machine to get them. The U-2 spy plane looked fragile, almost delicate. But it could fly higher than any Soviet fighter jet could reach. Washington believed it was untouchable. Until that morning. Powers took off from Pakistan with a mission stretching deep across the Soviet Union. He was expected to photograph some of the most heavily guarded military installations on Earth before landing safely in Norway. But as the aircraft crossed Soviet territory, alarms began screaming inside radar stations across the USSR. The Americans had been detected. Far below, Soviet commanders scrambled desperately to respond. Fighter jets climbed toward the sky but couldn't reach the altitude of the U-2. Then Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev made a decision. Launch the missiles. Inside the cockpit, Powers suddenly saw a flash behind him. Then everything exploded. The shockwave ripped through the aircraft. The U-2 spun violently through the sky. Metal tore apart around him as the plane disintegrated at the edge of space. For a few horrifying seconds, Powers was trapped inside a collapsing aircraft falling from nearly 13 miles above Earth. The CIA had issued him a poison needle before the mission. If captured, he was expected to use it. Instead, Powers fought to survive. Barely escaping the wreckage, he parachuted into Soviet territory alive. And that changed everything. Back in Washington, American officials believed the pilot had died. So they released a carefully crafted lie to the world. NASA announced that a weather research aircraft had gone missing over Turkey after the pilot experienced oxygen problems. For a moment, the cover story worked. Then Khrushchev smiled. Because the Soviets had something the Americans didn't expect. The pilot was alive. And so was the camera equipment. Suddenly, the United States was exposed before the entire world. The Eisenhower administration had been caught conducting secret surveillance missions over Soviet territory. International trust collapsed overnight. The Cold War became even colder. Powers was placed on trial in Moscow, standing alone under the glare of Soviet cameras while the world watched. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. But the story wasn't over. Nearly 2 years later, on a freezing bridge between East and West Germany, the Soviet Union traded Francis Gary Powers for captured Soviet spy Rudolf Abel in one of the most famous spy exchanges in history. A silent swap in the middle of the Cold War. No gunfire. No speeches. Just two shadows crossing a bridge between enemy worlds. Francis Gary Powers returned home alive. But the mission had already changed history forever. Because on one terrifying morning in 1960, a single falling airplane exposed the invisible war being fought above the clouds, and proved that even the skies were no longer safe during the Cold War.